Okay, so, um, okay, so Chelsea wanted me to talk about function-based intervention development.
Ooh,
Yeah, she just kind of picked that one out of a hat, so I said, okay.
cool. Does she give you like the ones to talk about? Because I never thought of asking Erin to tell me what to teach you.
If I don't have a topic, then she and I will talk about a topic, and she'll just kind of
Oh,
pick one, and then we'll talk about it.
cool.
Yeah, and so right, so when you're developing a behavior intervention plan, it needs to be function based. So the functions are what? What are the functions? I'm drawing a blank.
Attention,
Attention,
escape.
escape, sensory, or automatic, and I'm missing one. What's the other one?
I think you got four there.
Um,
Attention, escape, sensory, and automatic. Well,
sensory and automatic are
sensory
the
is
same
automatic.
thing, so I'm missing one. What am I missing?
Uh, Attention, escape, gain.
Tangibles.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Access to tangibles. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So once you've developed or once you've identified what function you think the behavior serves or the purpose of the behavior, then you need to develop an intervention package that addresses that same purpose. So all of your interventions need to serve the same purpose for the client or the child or whatever student you're working with. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It really has to serve the same purpose for the child.
Genevieve, is it okay if I record you? Because I think I'd like to have just your your record like your video recorded from my own like learning. Is that
Oh
okay?
sure, yeah, I don't care.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just press record. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah. So once you've identified or have a hypothesis of what purpose function you thought that um the behavior serves, you need to develop an intervention package that addresses that. The intervention must serve the same purpose for the child, or it won't work. And that's very well research has shown us that's very true. It really the most the best interventions are function based interventions.
Hmm.
And so there's three different types of interventions. You have skill-based interventions, antecedent-based interventions, and consequence-based interventions. So skill-based interventions, those type of interventions actually teach a new skill. So sometimes you'll be working with a child and you realize that maybe their behavior um, is really maladaptive because they don't have the skill to do the more socially appropriate behavior, and so you need to teach that new skill. That's skill-based intervention. Antecedent-based is an intervention that changes the environment that occurs prior to the behavior occurring. So if you notice that the child is really triggered by things in the environment, and usually they are, right? The antecedent is a big deal. ABC. Um, right? Antecedent is a big deal in ABA. And then there's also consequence based interventions, which change the consequence, right? So you can use one of these types of interventions when you're developing your intervention package, but more than likely you use all three.
Yeah.
Sometimes the child already has the skill in their repertoire, but so you might not use skill based. You'll just reinforce that different behavior, but you're almost always going to use antecedent and consequence based interventions to have a nice, well developed intervention package. You need both of those. And so you really need to ask yourself two questions when you're developing these your intervention packages. One is there a skill based intervention needed? Does the child have the skill in their repertoire? And if you decide that no, the kid doesn't really know how to do this more positive behavior, then you have to teach it. And your other question is there any you need to develop or figure out if there's anything in the environment that is triggering the child, and then you need to have your antecedent intervention address those. So these are things like modifications within the classroom, teacher instruction. I think a lot of times, we as teachers, as adults who work with kids, we need to acknowledge the fact that we ourselves might be an antecedent that is triggering this kid, and we need to change our own behavior. I think that's a big thing that I've realized, kind of consulting teachers, things like that. It's very hard for people to acknowledge that they themselves are causing the behavior, or the child just, our own bad behavior is triggering bad behavior. And so changing that is also called an antecedent intervention. And so an example might be, and I just developed this example like a half an hour ago, so I'm sure that. So this kid named John, he exhibits self-injurious behavior, right? He starts slapping himself every time the teacher says, okay, let's put on our jackets, let's go to recess, right? And so he's slapping himself, he's slapping anybody around him. And after assessment, they determined that primarily the behavior serves as an escape. He doesn't want to put on his coat. Even though he wants to go outside, he wants someone else to put the coat on, right? So it's an escape from that work expectation. And teachers say, oh, well, John's parents put it on for him and he just wants us to put it on for him. And the intervention they'd been doing in the past was just like forcing him to put it on. He cannot go outside until he puts it on. And they've kind of seen him been able to struggle to put it on, but in their minds he can do it. But after doing a task analysis, and I think this is really important for teachers to make sure they do a task analysis, because behavior chains have so many steps to them that a lot of times we don't identify those single steps that kids are missing that prevent them from moving on to the next step. And so doing a task analysis, they did a task analysis and realized, okay, there are some things that John really struggles with. And so we really do need to develop an intervention, a skill-based intervention package to help him do this. So they decide they're going to do backwards chaining. So they're actually going to put his coat on him like his parents do, but then they're going to have him, they're going to put the zipper in, but they're going to have him pull it up, right? So, and then in that way, he's going to start independently putting his jacket on, one last step at a time. So are you familiar with backwards chaining?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in this way, that's an antecedent. They're going to do an antecedent interventions. One, they're not going to say, let's put our jacket on, because that prompt is something that is triggering to him. They're not going to put the jacket on the floor in front of him, because that is also triggering to him. So they're going to prevent doing that. And they're also going to put a squishy ball in his hands as a differential reinforcement incompatible behavior, right? So he cannot start slapping with his face if he's squishing this ball. And so while they're trying to get to John, he's going to be squishing this ball, instead of thinking, I'm going to be forced to put my jacket on. So that's a second type of intervention behavior, or intervention that they're going to do, is the antecedent. And then consequence based, in theory, John's not going to escape from the behavior, because they're going to mostly put the coat on him like his parents, but they're going to do that last behavior chain. So they're going to prevent him from escaping by reducing the work expectation for him. So changing the consequence. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
okay.
And it's I love it. I love the way you broke it down, because like I was just imagining if that was my kid, like in my class right now, and like one kid who doesn't want to put his shoes on. He always takes his shoes off. He comes in, takes his shoes off, and it's time to go to the playground. And I'm like, all right, put your shoes on. No, no shoes, no shoes, socks. And like, okay. So I'm like, everyone who has their shoes on, you guys get to go outside. And everyone goes outside, and he has just his socks on. But I know that he could put his shoes on because I've seen him do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just make it the expectation that, you know, I know you want to go outside, but you're not going to go outside until you do this part.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the idea of, even though maybe the kid has that skill in his repertoire, like putting his shoes on, or John, you know, that if the teacher feels like he can put his jacket on, but like they feel like it's kind of just like a refusal, getting him a step closer to it to make it a little bit easier, making the expectation easier to fulfill, to get the reinforcer, is a great way to kind of start building success. Because one of the things that I was learning about in here is that you have to be able to access the reinforcer, otherwise it's not a reinforcement, right? So if the kid, you know, he can put his jacket on, but he never does, because maybe it's to him, it's like, I want to go outside, but not that bad, right? Like not bad enough to put my jacket on. And he doesn't he won't ever access the reinforcer to go outside. Then he might find something else within the classroom that's reinforcing too. And then you might lose the kid altogether, where now the kid would never going to go outside, and then you're never going to get the jacket on. So making it accessible, by backwards chaining, getting him really close to the reinforcer, so that way he just has to zip it up, and then he's outside, and then you can say, okay, like look how good this can be. Look how good life can be with you putting your jacket on. All right, next time you're putting your sleeve in, and then the zip up, and then you get to go outside. Yeah. So I think that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've noticed that happens a lot in significant support needs classrooms, or self-contained classrooms. Is there's always this problem with transition, and you've got at least one kid who won't do what is expected of them to move on to the next thing, and it's always this struggle. And I do think that backwards chaining works a lot, because and you can peel back too, right? But you get them close enough to where they can be independent and move on, because all this stuff is great in theory, right? But in reality, and I was talking to someone about this, because we work with this one guy. He's absolutely great with ABA. He knows all of the theory. He cannot work with kids. And then I've worked with other people who know nothing about ABA, but they just do it naturally, right? So there's got to be like this in between thing. One, you can explain and have some kind of purposeful intent, and also just kind of intuitively know what's going on with this kid, right? Because you can't be like, oh, I put together this package and he's still not doing it, right? I know he can put his coat on, but he won't do this, this, and this, and it's in the book, you know. But you also have to know that, well, I mean, he might put this coat on, but you know, there's other things that he's having problems with transition. If we just help him through the transition, and then we can peel back those prompting supports from most to least, we're helping the kid along, and we're also helping the class, because as soon as you have someone like break down and start screaming and crying, doesn't it seem like everybody else like falls apart too? Yeah.
Yeah, no, what you described, I think I'm like, man, I needed to hear this lesson today from you, because that's going to be my job. So like when I finish putting this program together, it's going to be that I'll have kids that are suspended from school, and they're going to be coming to my program, and then, like, again, focusing on skills that they need to be successful, identifying if there's any skill deficiencies. I'll be visiting the campuses from which they came from to determine what's happening in the environment, right? So doing the antecedent intervention, and then developing consequences and reinforcers that, you know, the kid's gonna want to do.